Yeah, this is the UX of CPTs, taxonomies, and roles in WordPress. So real quick about me, I am currently a lead product analytics engineer at the Knot Worldwide. If you're over 30 and you know someone who got married, you may have used one of our products, Wedding Wire, the Knot, the Nest, the Bump, Bodas if you're in Europe, and then also like we have some products over in China, so that's what I'm doing now. I was formerly the lead software engineer at Dow Jones, and I built out a program called NewsPress, which was like a standard for us with WordPress. I'm the founder of an abstract agency, which is a small WordPress agency here in New York. I'm a mentor at Thinkful sometimes, and Code Nation and All Star Code, where I mentor high school kids to code. And I'm a co-organizer here at WP NYC Meetup, and I sometimes help out with WordCamp NYC, which Mervin did get settled and will be October this year, so talk to Mervin if you want to volunteer. Cool. As always, I just always ask for this, and this goes back to backlinks. If you get people to tweet about you with your related keywords, it will help you rank. So if you Google Victor Ramirez WordPress, I rank very highly. And if you Google Victor Ramirez WordPress, you help me rank more highly, because it means that people click on my links. So yeah, go ahead and tweet at me. And I probably should have updated that. So this is 100% my personal and professional opinion. If you blow up your site and you kill a cat, that's on you, not me or the cat. And I just always like to say that. So there is code involved. So cut and paste on a local site, not on your live site. Cool. So CPTs, taxonomies, and roles. If you don't know what those are, you have seen them before. So when I say CPTs, taxonomies, and roles, an example of that would be the Strong Testimonials plugin. So I did set up some plugins on here, and I want to go and create a testimonial type. So I hit activate here, and now all of a sudden I get this thing, which I'll complain about in a minute, but I get this thing called here, all testimonials. I can add a new testimonial, and it says testimonials right here, right? You've seen taxonomies. There's some taxonomies here, such as categories, views, fields, but you can go and activate, if I go back to my plugins and I go and activate the events calendar, I think this is a great example of custom taxonomies. They use taxonomies to organize events. So for example, tags, event categories, venues, organizers, those are taxonomies. You've seen those before. It's a way to sort data. And then finally, custom roles. You have seen this with Yoast. When you activate Yoast, and now I go back to my users, and I want to add a new user, that new user can be assigned a role of SEO editor or SEO manager, right? Those roles did not exist before me installing Yoast. And the reason Yoast does that is you maybe can add someone as just an SEO manager or an SEO editor, and you don't have to give them full access to your website. They may just be someone who only does SEO. And those are some interesting things. However, there's a problem with all of these plugins, right? If you saw Strong Testimonials, it's a very non-standard UI. This is very non-standard, ads. This is like when I go to add a new CPT or, sorry, a new testimonial. This actually isn't that horrible, but like when you go to configure views, which is their way of like rendering something, their view builder, it's really confusing. And like once Yoast gets in there, actually, let's see, I go to add a view, and give it a second. And by the way, I'm leaving, this is all local. I'm going to show you guys something airplane mode that would disable all this because it won't let them dial to the internet. But this looks nothing like WordPress. You're essentially asking your user each time they use the website to relearn how to use their website because it's not standard, right? Like you guys would have to look up the manual or click one of these really helpful lions that help you buy support. Cool. Events calendar a little too much. It didn't happen when I activated this time, but the last time I activated, like this big modal came up with onboarding, which is fine, right? But again, like you'll notice like there's a lot of like warnings in here, which is helpful for like the standard user, but it can get a little like, it may be too much. Maybe if you're an event venue, you don't need organizers, venues, and imports and exports and all these things that can trip up your users. Maybe you just literally need an event title and event photo, right? And then Yoast, that essentially is just like, if you guys have ever seen Yoast, now when I go to add a post, it adds a very interesting, let's see, when I go to add hello world. And by the way, you'll notice this is really slow. The reason is that all of these plugins, and actually I found this out the other day, Elementor queries for your license on every admin page reload. Meaning when you, every time you hit like updates, settings, plugins, and you navigate your site, it's querying to Elementor's license checking thing, which is like ridiculous. Could you imagine like if your phone had a dial to check if your like phone was registered with Apple or Yahoo or any of those things all the time? It slows things down, and then it does this like great, like you'll notice like all this like cartoonish stuff, this Go Premium thing, you know, you can't remove that. It's just not, it may not be great, right? And so like some of these plugins, again, Yoast is a whole other story, but I just want to show the extreme. And so what's the solution? I'm going to go and deactivate these plugins. I do recommend Yoast. There's a great plugin called Hide Bloat though, and it gets rid of all the bad parts of Yoast while keeping the good parts. So I'm going to close this, and it's fine. I don't care. Deactivate this one. I'll just do this the bulk way. Deactivate. I would do Composer usually, but yeah, I'm just trying to keep it. We don't want to add new things. Okay, so cool. So and a couple of things that, by the way, I've added here. I have airplane mode, and I'm just going to use that just so we don't have to wait for the page to load. And what airplane mode does is it stops this thing from dialing the internet, so it won't let anything dial out. I'm using something here called Query Monitor, and I'll show you how that works as we build this out. So we're going to roll our own, right? And we're going to roll our own custom post types, roles, and taxonomies. So what can we roll? There's simple things where like you're doing an FAQ, and an FAQ is nothing more than the question field and the field where the answer is, right? You can roll a testimonial. A testimonial might be the name, you know, the person's name, their photo, a field, you know, for the testimonial, and then like a short version of that. And those things already exist. Like you can use the featured image from WordPress, you can use the title from WordPress, you can use the content from WordPress, and you can use the excerpt from WordPress. So you don't need a custom field builder, and you don't need a plugin. You can do a teammates page. For your teammates, you can just use, again, a featured image, the teammate's name, and then their bio in the content section. And the same thing with portfolio. You don't need a plugin for a portfolio with all that bloat and all those wonderful HTTP queries to check for the license and make sure you get that great support. There's two ways that we're going to roll this. Today I'm only going to show you how to do it with code, but you can repeat these with two great plugins. One plugin is actually made by a really good studio called Web Dev Studios, and the other one I'll show you is by a guy who's a contributor to WP Tavern. So I'll show you those two ways. If you're a developer, I highly recommend you just roll it with code. It's no more than like 20 to 30 lines of code for each of these things. And the reason for that is version control. If you ever set up a CPT or a taxonomy or something with a with non-code, it's in the database, and therefore you can't version control. If anyone is using Git, you can just git diff to see what someone did, and it's much easier. And I'll show that in a minute. Cool. So, but before we get into that, let's talk about what these things are. So when you go into WordPress, by default, it comes with two things. It comes with posts, and it comes with pages. It also comes with media, which is actually attachment. That is another post type. And there's a bunch of different post types in WordPress. But the two primary ones are posts, which are chronologically ordered. So when you go to like visit a blog, and I actually don't know if I loaded any dummy blog content in here, but you know, you'll see a listing of blog posts. And there's pages, which are static. They don't have a timestamp. They're essentially just pages that, you know, there's no reason for them to roll. And actually, if you notice, pages don't have an archive. So when I go to /blog, I get all my blog posts. There is no /pages. It's just, there's no archive, right? And I'll mention why that's important in a minute. And so those are the standard WordPress data structures. And you can go into the database and look and see how they're structured, and I'll talk about some of the pitfalls of that in a bit. Taxonomies are a grouping mechanism. So if you remember, we had events, and events were a type, but they were sorted by venue, they were sorted by organizer, they were sorted by location, they could be sorted by region. The same thing with testimonials. You could sort it by product, right? You could sort it by industry. You could sort it by what, any of these things. Roles, they define a set of capabilities. So for example, and I'll show you guys this graphically in a second, you can go and define a set of roles. So if you remember, Yoast creates an SEO manager. I haven't looked at the capabilities of it, but an SEO manager may only be able to edit the actual Yoast box. Maybe it restricts them from editing the title, editing what's on the page, editing the permalink. It only lets them edit the Yoast box. And that's pretty cool, right? Because imagine you can hire someone to just touch those things, and you don't have to worry about, they have limited capabilities. They're not going to install plugins or anything like that. And that's great if you're trying to a lot of the times, when you hear people, I tell them to hire someone, they say, I don't trust anyone. Well, it's that's because you're not using provisioning, right? The same way when I sign up to my bank doesn't give me bank teller access. They give me lowly customer access, right? And so that's and they have to call the manager. Managers have managers access. And so if you have a website, you should be thinking about that as well. And a lot of the times, I think when they say websites are hacked, it's because you have a site with 100 users and every single one of them is an admin that can install plugins. So it's not really a hack, and more such as a security, lapse in security. Cool. So when to use a CPT or when to roll your own. These are just some tips that I just wanted to share. If you want to maintain a standard WP admin, UI, UX, and capabilities. So for example, if you are going to make something like, if you guys saw when I was making the views or showing how the strong testimonials work, that was a very, very confusing user interface. Can you just hold questions to the end?
I just don't know what CPT is.
Oh, it stands for custom post type. So, so a custom post type is essentially, so you have posts and pages. An event would be a custom post type. A testimonial will be a custom post type. Thanks. Right. So, and then if you work in, just remember guys, there's acronyms in development. So the slides will be available. So you want to maintain the standard UI, UX. You want to take advantage of WordPress integrations. And I'll show you some of the things that you lose when you don't follow standard WordPress practices. And they're really powerful things you can do only by making sure you follow WordPress standards. And then also, no CRMs are highly complex data structures. So I've seen people try to use advanced custom fields to roll their own CRM or project management tool. And the problem with that is that advanced custom field stores everything for developers here in the metadata table. And so what happens is you're actually querying inside of metadata, going inside of each post and then querying the metadata table. And so it's really, really slow queries. And you have to bring in something called Elasticsearch, which means you have to hire an AWS engineer or someone familiar with AWS, and you also have to pay for AWS and configure that. So if you want to do that, that's cool. But if you don't, you don't have the patience or you're a one-man show, maybe you don't need that. Cool. So we're going to make a CPT and taxonomy service right now. I'm not a sociopath, so I'm not going to live code. So I have a GitHub repo live for everyone. And I'm going to give this at the end. I'm not going to give it to you now, but I've made a repository with all of the code right in here. And it has a simple directory structure of my child theme, and I'll zoom in a little bit here. My child theme, so the project theme, and the project functionality, which is under WPMYC Genesis and WMYC functions. And so for anyone not familiar, a plugin file is nothing more than me going and creating, let me zoom in here for everyone, me going into my actual theme directory structure, and as you guys can see here, there's plugins, WMYC functions, and inside of that functions folder, there is a WMYC functions plugin, and all I need to define is this plugin header. And what this plugin header does, and let me actually change, let's do something really, where's accessibility mode? That will make it super easy to do. There we go, cool. Nice and ugly, but super easy to read. In here, all I have to do is put that plugin header, and that defines the plugin. All this other stuff I added, and I'll show you guys what I added. And so now when I go back here, by defining that plugin header, you see, and I even I wrote lowercase w PMYC functions, and I say project-specific functions plugin for this site. That's it. And if you want to go look it up, you essentially just go into the plugin codex, and you look how to make a plugin, and they have this to cut and paste and just fill it out. That's it. It's super easy to do. And so now I've made a plugin. So I'm going to activate this plugin, and it's called WPMYC functions. It didn't have an ad, it didn't have a pop-up, it didn't have anything else, but now I have services and I have testimonials. So how did I get those, right? In the actual code, I went and I ran a function called WPMYC testimonial post type, which is how I'm creating a testimonial. I passed it some arguments, which again, I don't expect you to know all this. It's in the documentation, but I'll show you my hack that kind of taught me how to do this. And then I pass it like a bunch of true falses, and then it registers it. So all of this, you could delete half of this and I think keep one line. And a lot of developers do that. They'll just declare a post type and just like pass one or two of these arguments. But there's a missed opportunity there. And I'll get into like the nitty gritty of it. But the easiest way to go and create a custom post type is this tool called Generate WP. And so what Generate WP does for lazy coders is you go here and you go to Post Type Generator and you fill out this form. And so I didn't even make this today. I just was like, I'm lazy. I'm going to click testimonials. It gave me an example testimonial post type. And you might say to yourself, what does this all mean? What does archives mean? Well, these are labels, right? And so, and I'm not going to do this live, but I recommend you do this after, and this is in the links. In Generate WP, you go and say like, hey, I want to make a post type, and I'm going to name the function testimonial post type. I'm going to go and the key is testimonials, the singular is testimonial, the plural is testimonials. It has a taxonomy of this. This is actually kind of crappy. It says like add new item, edit item, update item. That's not very semantic. So what I do is I go and rewrite it to say update testimonial, edit testimonial, new testimonial, and so that's more semantic for the user. It has options, such as, now if you may notice like when I go and create a custom post type, you may not want certain things. You may not want Gutenberg enabled. You may not, remember I spoke before, you may just want a featured image and a title. You just go and turn the content editor on. Actually, I'll turn everything off except for the featured image and the title. And then I hit update code, and it updates the code for me. And this is like, as a developer, what I ended up doing is I keep a snippet of like my preferred settings for CPTs, and then I keep them in GISPad. And so I just keep those because how many times, like I've had like in the lifespan of my 15 years of development, I've had, 100 sites that need testimonials, 100 sites that need FAQs, 100. So really you can just cut and paste code from your other sites and use your sites as a kind of like lab. So what does that look like, right? And you'll notice here, I renamed a bunch of this stuff. So instead of the labels, instead of saying add testimonial, it says add new testimonial, edit testimonial, update testimonial. And the user experience, well, it looks like this. So I can go to my services. And this actually drives, Events Calendar does this, where if I go and edit, like I'll go and I'll edit this this service. And before I came in, I created some services. And this is like a service search engine optimization. And this is just like, standard Gutenberg. But I'm going to go, I'll add an exclamation mark, and I'll hit update. And you notice down here it says view service, not view post. And so you'll notice that even like with Events Calendar Pro, when you update an event, it says view post. And for non-WordPress users, that's really confusing. They don't know that, wait, why does it say update post? I thought this was a service. And so that's a very good UI thing to do. Also in the admin, I make this say view service, not view post, which is the standard. It's going to say not found. So the reason that happens is that every time you activate any kind of new CPT, you have to go and flush your permalinks. Write that one down because I didn't have it in the slides, but you want to flush your permalinks twice. And that makes it so then you can view your service. So I hit save changes twice. And it has something to do with Nginx and the way that the servers work.
And your public.
Right. And so I hit view. And now search engine optimization is there. And that's my CPT. And you'll notice it has a custom URL of services, and it's completely separate from my blog post. So that's another thing too. I've walked into websites, and under pages, there's like 535 pages, and one's called like landing page 1, landing page 2, holiday landing page, etc. You could go and make a CPT of landing page or a CPT of promotions, and that's a way to separate your promotional content from your actual page content, right? Because I've been on sites where there's like 5 about pages, about test, about this, about that, and that, you know, that's not a good way to have content. And so those are like little tweaks I made, and if I, you know, I can, I'm not gonna show you guys right now, but like you on the testimonials, I made those a lot more simple, right? And you can even see, again, same thing, I wanted to generate WP because I'm lazy. I didn't code this, and in our testimonials, I went and did a couple things. I changed the dash icon to awards. You'll notice like a lot of developers when they make a CPT, they just have a little pin here, the same as posts. I changed it to like this little award. And then I went and did something here where I essentially said a couple things. Show an admin bar, false. So you'll notice here it doesn't say view testimonials. There's no view testimonials. The reason for that is I don't want my testimonials to be publicly queryable. My testimonials are only going to exist on widgets, or they're only going to exist on a REST API, and I'll get into that in a second. And then my testimonials, because they have no front end, when you see me add a testimonial, remember I said we're only going to have feature, image, and title? That's what I did here. There's nothing here to click. I can only add the testimonial title instead of featured image, right? And so, of course, maybe I want to add one more field, but I just did that for kind of demonstrational purposes. And then the other thing is, in this CPT, I also defined that it is not publicly queryable. And what that means is there is no front end for this type. Meaning if someone tries to search the testimonials or view the testimonial, it is unavailable. It is only queryable by me as a developer. And again, that is for something that I want to bring into like a custom application or something, you know, along those lines. So what I also did, and again, this is all in the code if you guys want to check it out. I wrote, and by the way, when I doc, I use PSR4 doc blocks with links. I don't have an original idea in my body. I just go and steal code from 2014. And this is literally what it does is this goes and checks, and I'll just show you guys what it does. So when you go and update a post, right, remember it says view service, view post, view whatever, but what if we don't want to view? There's no reason to view this if it's not publicly queryable, right? So when I go and say, this talk rocks, and I hit publish, it simply says testimonial published. It doesn't say view testimonial, right? And so a lot of the times you'll be on a custom site with a custom plugin, it will say view testimonial, and what happens, you go and visit it, and you'll notice this doesn't even have a permalink, right? You'll visit it and you get a 404. And so what I did here was I wrote a conditional that says if the post is publicly queryable, then use the standard, you know, view link. If the post is not publicly queryable, then use these custom messages up here. And it just says testimonial updated, custom field updated, this updated, revision updated, published, no links, right? And with that conditional, I can just cut and paste this between all my different custom post types. Cool. So again, this is all in the repo. This is like a little more advanced, but these are just things user experience-wise, thinking about that, right? How many times have you been on a site where like, you know, you say update and you're clearly not updating a post. You clearly shouldn't have an archive. Any of those things, these are the kind of, these UX things. And to let you guys know, I was joking about this, and I did a talk somewhere of this, but about Gutenberg using this. Most of my code is from 2011. So if you see this, like even here, I think in the one snippet, it says, again, because I put doc block and all this stuff. Where is it? This is all code from 2011. I'll find it somewhere in here. Anyway, believe me, trust me, it's old, and so it's not fancy at all. There we go, 2014, 2011, whatever. So that's a custom post type. But what if we want to sort that content, right? So like we want to sort our services. And so let's do it live. I'm going to go and say I want to make a taxonomy. So I'm going to go to generate WP. I'm going to go to taxonomies. And I already did this, by the way. I did one of region. So if you see under services, I added a taxonomy of region. So I could do a region of like, and you guys have seen this under posts, there's categories, right? But I can say Northwest, right? And now my slug will be Northwest. And there's no parent region, and I'll add a new region, right? Now when I go back to edit my services, and I'll do a quick edit, let's see if that actually, yeah, it shows up there. I can now hit Northwest there, right? And I've assigned, again, It's just a category, it's just a tag. I've assigned, you know, a custom taxonomy to this. And now when I go back to region and I hit view region, it shows all services that are under Northwest, right? So think about that. And that, again, like you have to write some custom code in your template system to get rid of this metadata. That's another thing. But so all I'm going to do, and I don't have one for my testimonials. So let's go, I don't know, let's be stupid just because I'm lazy. We're going to do car manufacturer just because I'm lazy. And I'm going to update the code. And watch how easy this is. I'm just going to cut and paste this, like car manufacturer taxonomy. And maybe, oh, there we go, testimonials from individual car manufacturers because I make parts or something. I don't know, right? Roll with it, roll with it. So I'm going to go to testimonials. I'm going to go to the bottom here. And again, you have to use an IDE because like you'll notice if I do something stupid like this, or not, that's actually not that stupid. I don't know if I do something like here, you get like a red underline, right? So it warns you. If you use an IDE, it will like save you a lot of headaches. Cut and paste this in there. And again, version control, so I know what someone added. And all I'm going to do, and this is documented, but again, if you fill out the form and generate WP, it does it for you. When I register my taxonomy, I'm passing an array of what it's available on. So you can share custom taxonomies. So I'm going to go, let's actually share it between service and testimonial. I got an extra there. All right, cool. So again, I just cut and pasted from generate WP. Now I go back to my site, I refresh, and there we go, manufacturer. So I can go to like manufacturer and type Honda, and there we go. So notice now we're not wasting our time installing a bloated plugin with all these ads and all the stuff I don't need. And the reason I want to show you that this code is from 2011, let me run through this. The reason I wanted to show you this code was from 2011 was that when I first started out with WordPress development, I wanted to use plugins because I didn't want to maintain something, right? So for example, if you work in JavaScript, one of the big nightmares of JavaScript, or even like if anyone installed Catalina recently and had fun with that, or updated Catalina and had fun with that, and had to reinstall Xcode install every single time, which you run a slow connection, or you're flying to Phoenix, takes 4 hours. You don't want to do that, right? And so like, that's called dependency management, right? But everything I'm showing you right here has not changed in like 6 or 7 years. So it's very easy to maintain. There's a lot of backwards compatibility. And so you notice I made a testimonial system. I made a service page. And so it's very easy to make these kind of things. And I'm not going to get into Gutenberg right now. But in that testimonial, I could use Gutenberg instead. And I could whitelist blocks and only allow a quote block in my custom post type. So essentially I'm saying only testimonials are allowed, like the quote block is allowed inside this custom post type. And then the user is getting a Gutenberg experience, but they're locked down. And so let me show you, that's what I wanted to get into, was the superpowers of this stuff. And this is kind of funny, like how many times do you Google something like how to make Elementor work with MailChimp, how to make Beaver Builder work with MailChimp, how to make it work with ConvertKit Pro, how to make it with any of these things, right? WordPress has a very powerful thing built into it, and it's called RSS feeds or XML. And so all of these tools, MailChimp, ConvertKit, Drip, ActiveCampaign, they all allow for RSS and XML interpretation. So you don't actually need to build a custom configuration, you just have to give them your XML feed. And when you build a custom post type, you get a custom XML feed. So you can do RSS powered, so I was even like doing something recently for myself, but I'm just too lazy to launch it. Like I was like, made a custom post type of tips, or there's a guy, Rafal Tamal, from the Studio Press community, and he has a CPT of tips, and all it is a quote. And so every day he puts a quote into his CPT of quotes, it displays in a special way, and then in MailChimp, it's anytime he posts a new tip, it gets sent out in MailChimp. And MailChimp just grabs the post type and puts it in there. Apps via the REST API. So you could go and make an FAQ section, and again, in the REST API, query your FAQs. Now, why would you want to do that? Why wouldn't you go and build a custom React application FAQ? Well, throw a rock in Brooklyn, and you're not going to find a React developer. Throw a rock in Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, Staten Island, or Manhattan, and you're going to find 50 WordPress developers, implementers, right? People who know the way around the admin. And that makes it easier for onboarding, training, maintaining, and building out a team. And so I worked with like a Broadway ticketing startup, and they had a headless REST API. We did FAQs, testimonials, and blog posts. And the reason was that they had 30 street teams that they didn't have time to train. By maintaining the WordPress standard, we were able to train them by just literally copying and pasting stuff from WordPress documentation instead of having to roll our own documentation. Blocks via ACF. This is like the coolest thing that I've seen recently. I actually don't like blocks via ACF because they don't have custom UI. But there is, and I have this in the further reading articles, one of my favorite things is you can do what's called a block picker. And let me actually see if I can find that, and I'll put it in the links. Joey Ferrugio was his name. There we go. There we go. So what this guy did was, all it is a CPT. Now, if you don't have a custom, you can't do this, because how many times have you had a plugin and it doesn't allow a block, right? So all he does, and I'm not going to go into the code if you guys want to check it out later, what it does is it allows a block, a CPT picker. So remember I said you make a custom post type of people? He went and made a custom post type of testimonials. It displays the person, he clicks it, and it renders on the page, just like that, right? And so instead of having this insane thing with like the lion telling you get cool support and like all this other stuff, it's, you know, about 40 lines of code you copy. And even if you guys want, the code doesn't work, I commented on it, just go to my comment and it's fixed. I told him how to fix it, and he might have updated it. And so like literally that's what we're doing. Like, you know, how many times have you done this, right? And so that's what's really cool. And there's other cool stuff you can do with that. It's easy to debug and maintain. So the reason I wanted to do this, I put this in a repository, was I wanted to show you guys like some diffs. So I went into my commits, and this was my, you know, I added taxonomy, right? And if anyone is a non-developer here, this is the power of having version control, GitHub, Bitbucket, one of those things. Now this is a big fit, like I went and added the taxonomy, so it's a lot of lines. But what if all of a sudden you're getting a 404 on the front end of your testimonials, right? And you're using a Gutenberg type testimonial, meaning you want it publicly queryable. Well, then you just go and look at, hey developer, where I don't know where you are, and like this is, I want to look at this. They make a PR, and all you can actually see a diff of all they did was make something not publicly queryable, not a taxonomy, but on a CPT, so that'd be on a different commit. And so it's much easier to debug, and even for myself, if anyone here is a developer, I use things like GitHawk on my phone, where I can literally do PR reviews on my phone. And so you can, and if it's simple PRs, that's all you can like work from your phone and travel remotely. And so, but again, like imagine trying to log into Elementor and go through activity log and finding an issue that someone made on your WordPress website. Not very easy, right? And so that's like kind of like why those things be a pain in the ass. Cool. Now before I get into further reading, I didn't get a chance to do user roles and capabilities because I realized it was getting really advanced. And so for further reading, I put these all in here. Everything these are great guides. Two are from one's from Kinsta, one's from TypeRocket, and one is from Hostinger. And these are like the Bibles, and as far as like even like Derek here works with me, and so does Ali. Like they both read these articles, and like they will level you up. These links are here; they're clickable in the slides. And the plugins I recommend are CPT UI and Justin Tadlock's members. So remember before I said you want to lock down your site? It's very easy to do that with a tool like Justin Tadlock's members, which does a lot of the writing for you. Again, I recommend custom coding it if you're a developer. You can version control it. But once I started writing the code for this and the kind of the granularity of custom capabilities, I wanted to show it visually. Because there's no generate WP for user roles that is easy to read. So I activated this plugin. I'm going to activate this plugin. And I'm going to click members. I'm going to activate it. And the reason I recommend this plugin, no advertisements. I actually use this on a lot of sites because there's no ads. And it's a very like well done plugin and whatever. So I go here. I'm going to go to users. And I have a user, I have the standard users, but I'm going to roles. And the first thing you get is you get a client who's like, I want admin control, right? So what I do is I go and make a new role. I clone editor, and I call it admin. And there you go, you're now an admin. And they have admin control. And so I go and add the user, and I say, client name, and client at client.com, and we're going to make them an admin. I'm not going to send them an email. And you guys will notice how much faster it's loading with this airplane thing on. It's really good. So now they're an admin, and they say, wait a minute, I can't do this. And so what this tool actually does, you can write your custom capabilities, and it maps through all of the capabilities in WordPress. And so, for example, like posts, I can make it so that this person cannot edit other people's posts. But the admin, of course, you'd want that. But I could maybe make it that the admin, I don't want them editing my demo content. Like right now, we're doing a couple staging sites, and I immediately turn off edit others' posts because I don't want them touching our demo content because we need that for styling purposes, right? I can make it so they can't delete other people's posts. On pages, I can make it so that they can't edit other pages. I can make it so they can't upload media. I can make it so they can't use blocks. I can make it, now of course, remember you get clients and they're like, oh, I want to be able to do themes. Edit the theme. Okay, you know what? I don't want to let them be able to install themes, switch themes, or update themes. I'm going to give them the ability only to edit theme options. And so now that user only has the ability to edit theme options. And just in the last 2 minutes that I have, I'm going to install one more thing. It's called user switcher. And so what user, oh, because I have airplane mode on, by the way. You'll never, airplane mode doesn't let you see plugins. Because it can't dial to the internet, essentially. It's great if you're like actually on an airplane. So I'll go to user switcher. Or is it called user switching?
User switching. User switching.
Yeah, this one, yeah. And again, this is John Blackburn. He's a contributor. He built this thing called Query Monitor, which if you want to not believe me, install Query Monitor and then set up Elementor and watch your queries and cry. But there's a hack around that. If anyone's interested, you just essentially install a plugin called HTTP Logger, and then you create a whitelist of allowed HTTP calls, and you find the HTTP call and block it, and only whitelist your HTTP calls. You block it in production. Don't block it in staging because you do want to get updates. Yeah, so I installed this plugin, and now what I can do is go back to users, and I can go back, and I can go back to this client name, and I go switch to the admin, and I'm under admin, and actually I think I programmatically in this theme disabled the ability. But believe me, they would have the ability to edit the theme options there. It's just that I went and turned it off. And again, that is in the resources that I shared, where you can see here under custom user roles and capabilities, you can program a role and make someone only a landing page editor, only an SEO editor, only a translator, etc. And if you go check it out, it's on github.com/isvictoria. And again, I will post these slides on Twitter and on Meetup in the comments. And that's it. So, any questions?
If we follow that repo, will that increase your rankings in GitHub?
I don't know. Maybe. I hope so. No, I mean, if you'll notice, everything I have says WordPress on it, it helps to make sure you do that. That's it. That's and it's actually called mesh linking from Google. They look for mesh networks.
What was the purpose of not showing testimonials in the first place?
So there may be something that you don't. So if you, I'll show you right now. Actually, if anyone goes and go spend money with them because they're nice people and they paid me money. So they have a React application, right? And this React application, this is actually not WordPress. This is React. And so this React application dials to the WordPress website, which is hidden, and it says, "Give me this title." Give me this image, give me this paragraph, give me the read more, right? But then also they have FAQs. And those FAQs, they don't want the editors who are editing the site to go and view those FAQs and edit them live on the page. They serve to an application. So you can go and make you could go and make a type of people or go make, and so that's called headless WordPress. And so one of the benefits of that is you can use a static site generator, or you can make it serve an iOS app. And you may just have a WordPress system that you like the CMS because it's easy to train people, but you don't want the front end of WordPress because you don't want to make a theme, you don't want a template, you just essentially are using it as a way to manage data. If you just look at headless WordPress, there's great guides that explain it. So was that too much or too little, or did I blow your mind? So what was it? All right.
Love you.
Cool. All right. Awesome. Well, thank you for coming out. Yeah.